Hello, our group name is We're Watching. These are the members. And our theory is reader response.
Reader's response is a theory that focuses on the reader's or audience's reaction to a particular text.
The origin. So reader response, it doesn't have an exact origin, it's kind of blurry, but we think it developed in the 1960s and 70s and kind of came up between two movements, elitist and populist, which is essentially political figures versus the common man, and there's some controversy over how this impacted the theory.
Some questions to ask while reading include, do you find the text racist? Is the text poorly written? What does the text have to do with you personally? Does the text agree with your view of the world? What can you praise about the text, and what is your overall reaction to the text? And a quote that further explains our theory was written by Stanley Fish, and he said, "It is not that the presence of poetic qualities compels a certain kind of attention, but that the paying of a certain kind of attention results in the emergence of poetic qualities. Interpretation is not the art of construing, but the art of constructing. Interpreters do not decode poems, they make them."
So there are 5 types of reader's responses. One is transactional, another is affective stylistics, the third is psychological, the fourth is social, and the fifth is subjective.
So the transactional type was theorized by Louis Rosenblatt, and basically what it states is that the poem acts as a stimulus, and the reader interprets that stimulus in their own way. So based on their background knowledge, each reader can have a different interpretation of the poem. An example of this would be if a poem mentions a dog, a reader who had a background experience where a dog bit them would think, oh no, the poem's bad because I don't like dogs because they're evil. Whereas if a person was had a really cuddly dog and loves dogs, then they'd be like, I love this poem because it's so nice because now it has a dog.
Another type is affective stylistics. This was theorized by Stanley Fish, and it involves the reader's prior expectations compared to what's actually happening. This applies to the shattering or fulfillment of the reader's expectations of the text and is examined very closely in order to understand how it affects the reader. So an example of this in the poem Fire and Ice by Robert Frost, if one was reading this, they would focus on the difference between how the world will end. Some say fire, some say ice, and so some might examine the relationships between the people and their beliefs.
So just remember, while we're going through all of these, essentially the reader and the poem play equal parts in creating the experience. So if you took a poem and multiplied that by half, and then the person and multiplied that by half, and then added them together, you'd have the overall experience.
Alright, so psychological is another type, and it's essentially literary analysis based on psychoanalytic theory, and that's a very big word, so just remember that there is another group that will be going over this later, but just think that it involves the identities of the writer and how they mix with the identities of the reader, and how that affects their response. There'll be more on this later.
The fourth type is social reader response, which is based on the idea that we're predisposed to interpret things in a certain way based on the society that we have grown up in, and it's also based on shared constructs.
The fifth type.
An example of this would be The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. In our society, demons have a negative connotation of evil, and dreaming can also be interpreted as a nightmare because the raven is the one who's having the dream. So we can see how the author is losing hope and eventually dies emotionally.
The fifth type of reader's response theory is a subjective theory, in that there is no meaning beyond what's in the reader's mind. An example of this would be if you had the text, "The buzzards flew overhead." In the reader's mind, the buzzards could associate with bad luck. And with bad luck following that person, or the buzzards following that person, the person associates bad luck with the person.
So just a quick summary, kind of a spark note. Basically, reader response theory is how the reader or audience and what they react to what they read. And there are 5 types: subjective, transactional, affective, stylistic, psychological, and social. And remember that past experiences and other factors can affect how this affects people differently, which are known as criticisms of the theory. And remember, everybody's experience is unique, and it's all about thinking, so while we're reading, it's important to ask questions.
Citations. Yay! Bye.